It's time for an episode of View from Military Mind for 2021. Views and opinions about world and national events from the mind of a military veteran that has served and defended this country since 1978. Insight that has been molded by the commitment and sacrifices of the Americans that are defending and have defended our freedoms for the past 247 years. Unfiltered, unedited, and certainly not PC. We are those people. Let's stand up and stand firm. I want to welcome everybody to the show today. It's a little later in the day, as we announced earlier. Gives more people a little more time to get woke up, get their cup of coffee, get the family rolling for the day, and make their plans. So today, what we're going to look at what the White House is doing to reform the War Powers Act, what their suggestions are. Uncle Joe took a shot at Iran, so that now they want to reform it. Fort Lee, Virginia may house migrant children. We'll take a little look at that and give our opinions and views on that. And by all means, y'all are welcome to include your opinions on here. We'll look also at Dr. Fauci now thinks he's got the authority to scold the military over vaccines. Hey, we're Americans with freedoms too, and we can make our own choices. And our final thing we'll look at is the National Guard and the Capitol riot, what the response and the aftermath was and what happened. So hang tight with me. We'll get back on here in just a minute and we'll go over some of this stuff. And don't forget, Lady Liberty's crying over what's going on now.
What do you see in a parade? You see children with their flags, families clapping and laughing. What do you see when he walks by? Do you see his struggle, his path, his fight? Do you see him? When he walks alone. When he stands by himself. But he stands knowing the force of the VFW, America's largest organization of combat veterans, has his back. We are the VFW, and no one does more for veterans.
All right. Well, we're back, and let me put this back up here right real quick, kind of like the image. Right now, Lady Liberty is crying. She's like holding her eyes and going, "What are we doing? This is crazy." So, like I said earlier, we're going to talk a little bit about what the White House is wanting to do, and they're wanting to reform or restructure the War Powers Act. Now, for those of you who do not know what the War Powers Act is, that's the act that allows the president to commit forces in an immediate response prior to congressional approval. Now, it's not an authorization for him to commit a war. That has to be approved by Congress and declare war. This is just to give a response to something that's happened, such as the rocket attacks we just recently had on our troops in the base Al-Assad in Iraq, where they had, if I remember correctly, it was 10 rockets were launched into there. We did have one fatality of a contractor. Again, you know my feelings on contractors and them over there doing military jobs, but that's, again, we'll have another show for that one to restate that one. But the White House on Friday signaled a willingness to work with Congress on developing a narrow framework for the authorizations of use of military force after President Biden's airstrikes. It was in Syria last week. I made a mistake. I said Iran. It was in Syria. And this has sparked a fresh war powers debate. Um, and it's actually, which is unusual in this current day and climate, has bipartisan support or bipartisan input. Senator Tim Kaine, Democrat from Virginia, and Senator Todd Young from Indiana, a Republican, introduced a bill in the Senate this week that would repeal two military authorizations, effectively curbing the President's War Power Act. Of course, their fine press secretary, Jim Psaki, called Kaine a leader on questions of war powers throughout his time in the Senate and indicated the executive branch would be open to those changes. Of course, they've been trying to do that. They don't like, just in case they get out, they don't want the Republican president to have a whole lot of power. But they go on to state that they're committed to working with Congress to ensure that the authorizations for the use of military force currently on the books are replaced with a narrow and specific framework that will ensure that we can protect Americans from terrorist threats while ending the forever wars. And again, this is Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, said on Friday. Now, Kaine and Young's bill, the bill from Kaine and Young, would repeal the 1991 and 2002 authorizations for the use of military force. They're called AUMFs, authorized use of military force. They both deal with Iraq. So the senators sought to rein in the president's war powers during the Trump administration, but failed to get enough votes to do that. They knew at that time the president needed this authority to be able to protect and defend in our overseas areas. Now, they go on and it tells us what prompted the legislation that Biden's decision to launch airstrikes in Syria last week reignited the debate, with lawmakers in both parties expressing frustration over a lack of consultation with Congress before military action was taken. Okay, the administration didn't cite either the 91 or 2002 authorization for the military strikes, and this is the first one that's been carried out since Biden took office. Of course, this debate is going to have repercussions beyond just Syria, but senators say it underscores that while the administration has changed since the last time the issue was spotlighted, the need for action from Congress has not. Okay, it's absolutely frustrating when you get these career politicians in there that say, you've got to consult me and advise me when you're going to do things of war. No, he doesn't. He's the president. Okay. I'm not a big fan of Joe Biden, but I'm a big fan of our presidency and our executive branch. And he does have that authority to protect and defend the United States. And with the current climate that we have in Congress, you start telling these yahoos what's going on and divulge classified information to them, you have just told the world what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. So excuse me if I don't trust our Congress, whether it be the Senate or the House, because in a military view, you don't discuss your operational or tactical plans with anybody outside who's going to do it. I mean, that would be like taking everything that the special forces or special operations group do and put it on a billboard right outside Washington, D.C. so everybody can see the op plan or the TAC plan. That is absolutely stupid. Telling especially the House, but telling the Congress as a whole what's going to happen next is ludicrous and is just asking to have our asses handed to us and to get the country attacked, or to have, the enemy will be prepared so they can fire back or defeat the operation that we've got going on. So no, I don't agree with what they're talking about here. This is absolutely, you can tell they're not utilizing their military background or the military personnel that they have in Congress, and they're not consulting them about this. And if they are, they're not being very strong in their standing on this. So no, to take all these war powers acts away from the president just because you're frustrated, sorry. I've spent the better part of 60 years of my life being frustrated over things, but I'm not going to go over and change the law or cry and whine because you didn't tell me. I know what my position is. I know what I'm allowed to know. I know what I'm allowed to do. And I'm sorry, Congress, you don't need to know. You're not trustworthy. Um, it has been mentioned in a lot of the circles I run in that you're actually treasonous. So, no, you don't need to change these. You need to leave it alone and let us go on. Now, if you're going to fix it to where, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I understand the forever wars. We don't want to get into those. I know I've served twice in Afghanistan. That war needed to end a long, long time ago. Um, don't ask me how we could have done that, but we needed to. Um, but yeah, there are some reforms that need to be done, but you can't just go in there and reform it because I didn't get told. Sorry, Bucky. We don't tell you everything, and you don't need to know it. Thank you. So, real quick, we'll move on to the next little fiasco that's going on there. But before I do, say good morning to Bill Muckler there. Bill, glad you could join us. Bill's been a guest on the show before, author and Marine Corps veteran, very good friend and a brother. um, but yeah, I encourage everybody to get on the chat room. Send me your questions. Send me your opinions. We'll put them up here. I have no problem with that. Everybody is entitled to their opinion, whether it be left, right, center, green or alien. Go ahead and bring it up. I'd love to see you pop up on the chat room there. It is live, so we can answer it right away to the best of my knowledge. Sometimes I make errors. That's the beauty of the show. I make an error and I can fix it later. I wish my good friend Rich Ashton was on with me today. Rich is the host of Moving It Right, which is also on YouTube and Facebook Live every weekday at 11 Eastern Time, 10 Central. I'm on there Tuesdays and Thursdays with him. And if he was around today, I'd have him on the show and we could sit there and banter back and forth and really kick the show up. But he's not. Rich, if you're listening, I hope you're having a good day. Do not shoot another ball into the water because I know he's probably playing golf down there in West Palm Beach. So anyway, moving on to our next one. The administration, the Biden administration, is eyeing using Fort Lee, Virginia, to house migrant children. This would be under the DACA, which the Dreamers Act or whatever you want to call it. But it's absolutely crazy that we're going to utilize our military bases to put these migrants on. They do need to be taken care of. Do not get me wrong. But they have no business on a military base, especially Fort Lee. Of course, that gives Biden and his administration a good political optic that, hey, looky here, we have them close by. Fort Lee is just outside of Washington, D.C., and we're taking care of these migrant children that come across the border without parents, or however you want to look at it. But it tells us here that upon request from the Department of Health and Human Services, the U.S. Army coordinated a site assessment at Fort Lee for HHS personnel to determine if certain facilities at Fort Lee may be suitable for providing temporary housing for unaccompanied children. All right. They noted that the Defense Department has not received a formal request for assistance from HHS to use the Army facility, which, like I said, it's about 30 miles south of Richmond, Virginia, but it's close to Washington, D.C. Now, Reuters had first reported on the base being identified as possible housing for unaccompanied minors who have increased in number at the southwest border since Joe Biden took office, because guess what he did? Let's open the borders. Okay. Uncle Joe is not exactly the most intelligent individual in the world, and he takes advice from people that are stupid. Now, please, those of you out there who are immigrants to the United States, do not be offended. I have no problem with immigrants when you come in properly, when you are vetted properly, when you obey the laws. When you cross my border illegally, outside of proper border crossing area, you are a criminal, period. Does not matter where you came from, what your condition is, what your situation was back home. First off, not my problem. Second off, you did it illegally. Okay. If you paid a coyote several $1,000s to drag your butt across the United States border out of Mexico, you are a criminal. So debate that with me if you wish. I'm prepared for that. But the law is the law. We have laws in place for a reason. If you want to see the results of open borders, take a look at Germany, at France, several of your European nations who have uh, just opened their borders up to anybody and everybody, and now they have problems with enclaves of untraceable immigrants that's committing murder, committing rapes, and committing honor killings and everything else under the sun. You know, look at our own crime rate. Don't stick your head in the sand. Illegal immigrants. Now, I'm going to say it's not the vast majority, but a majority. I would say probably 20, 30% are of a criminal element coming across and committing murders, getting sent back across, back to Mexico or back to Colombia or wherever they came from, and they show back up again because they can cross the border easily and they commit more crimes. The facts are out there, people. Look at them. Do not put your head in the sand and say, I don't see that, because it's BS. Now, back on this with Fort Lee, I got off on a tangent there. I'm sorry. But they said there's a rising number of migrants coming across the border has put a strain on the department's facilities. And border agents have apprehended thousands of migrants in Biden's first 6 weeks in office, many of whom are unaccompanied minors. Now, the solutions that are needed is the surge has already happened, and it's already prompted the administration to plan to convert 2 family detention centers in Texas that were used briefly during the Trump administration. And there are reportedly plans to get the Federal Emergency Management Agency involved to up resources near the border. Great. We're going to take the money that we could have finished the wall with and enhanced border security, and we're going to build more stuff to house illegal personnel coming across the border. And we're going to give them additional benefits. How about that's just how about if I go to Mexico and just turn in my U.S. citizenship and jump across so I can get some benefits to make up for what I've been losing giving to these people? I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of this at all. It's crazy. It says HHS said it must aggressively find solutions for what to do with the children. Well, yeah, you do. Stop them from coming across the border is the first thing you need to do. Lock the border down. If their parents are coming up to the border and then shooting little kiddies across there and leaving them on their own, close the border. Tell mommy and daddy keep their happy asses over there with their children. We don't need them. We got enough problems. We need to take care of our children here. You've got children in the United States that are born here to United States citizens that are having a hard time. You want to talk about helping out the underprivileged? Let's take care of our underprivileged that were here first, that are here legally. Get them an education, get them food, get them clothing, get them housing. Here in the city that I live in, I go by a homeless areas on my way to work every morning. And I have started noticing an increase of children in these homeless areas, in these homeless cities, tent cities. And it's appalling that we're going to give this money away to people crossing our borders that we can physically stop. We're giving that money away to them and forgetting all about those we currently have here that need help, need to be taken care of. Those children didn't do that to themselves. Their parents probably need mental health help, or they've lost their job over this silly ass pandemic we've got going on. And that's the only resource they've got, a tent on somebody else's property or city property, and living day to day, hand to mouth with what they can find or what's handed out to them. So how about let's take care of our own first? Close that damn border. We got enough problems of our own. All right. Now, The United States has previously used military bases to house unaccompanied children during the Obama administration in 2004. Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Naval Base Ventura County in California, and Forest Hill, Oklahoma. And they house roughly 7,500 unaccompanied minors from Central America. Those housing areas closed after 4 months of use. So, and in 2019, the Trump administration asked the Pentagon to find space to house up to 5,000 migrant children. So, it's not that it hasn't been done before. Yes, it has, but it's time to stop it. I mean, we are trillions of dollars in debt. Part of it attributed to this border issue that's going on because we have an idiot up there and his followers in his administration opening this border up because we're going to be worldwide and help everyone. Let's help our own people first, damn it. I didn't fight for Colombia or Mexico or South America or any of those other countries that are sending people north or people are trying to escape from. I fought to defend the United States and its Constitution and its citizens. And the key word being its citizens. Okay. Come in legally or get the hell out. All right. The next thing we're going to take a look at, we're going to talk about real quick. And come on, people, give me some comments there. Bill, I know you're out there. Carol, you guys can make comments. Don't just listen to me ramble and rattle here. This gets boring when I get to do it that way. But I'll tell you what, we're going to shoot a quick ad up here real quick. And we'll be right back. And we'll talk about Dr. Fauci and his concerns over military personnel opting out of the vaccine. So hang tight with me. We're going to knock this out real quick, and then we'll get right back to it. All right? Hang on.
I was in the hospital with my son for 18 months.
When he got injured, I wasn't prepared, but I knew I had to be strong.
When I was told about John's injury, I was in complete shock. I just remember rushing into his room and giving him a big hug and letting him know I was there.
These veterans and families are just a few of the heroes we serve at Homes for Our Troops. For thousands of severely injured veterans, everyday life is filled with barriers.
It was really the little things throughout the house. Counters that you can't roll up to.
How to drag my wheelchair down steps.
I want to help, but he is so determined.
At Homes for Our Troops, we build specially adapted custom homes with features like wheelchair access, roll-in showers, and automatic door openers that allow them to function independently and focus on their recovery and family.
This house is freedom.
It's hope. It's a new beginning.
This house has given me my family back.
To learn more, visit hfotusa.org.
All right. Homes for Heroes. If you can, give them a good support. These are some of the guys that went over there and took the brunt of a lot of things. Great organization. It's helped out a couple of good friends of mine, a couple of guys I've deployed with. So I highly recommend you support Home for Heroes. And if it's right along in with what we were talking about, you know, we're having to rely on donations to help out our veterans that were injured because our government has decided that, okay, obviously they're not worthy of a whole lot of money. If you've ever dealt with the VA or TRICARE or Humana and the heartache and the ass pain that you go through trying to deal with those just to use the benefits that you've worked so hard for or you served for, it's ludicrous. It's ludicrous. And then we're going to piss away money on people who cross our border illegally. And now we've got, we're going to give all this money away to criminals, and our veterans are having to ask for donations from the citizens of the United States to provide them with assistance because of their injuries. It pisses me off to no freaking end because I don't know how to fix it. Well, I do. I do know how to fix it. Put a stop to it. Ed Dozel, hey, bud, welcome aboard. I see you're checking in, serious. So I appreciate you coming on board. Missed a couple of things, but that's all right. You can watch the show later on. And for all those that don't know, this does get put on Facebook and YouTube, and it is viewable later on. I do put it out as a podcast on the next day, so you can pick it up on View from Military Mind at your favorite podcast player. I cover, I think, about 12 different podcast players, and I'm heard all over the United States and in 30 different foreign countries. So if you're listening to me from Istanbul or Bangladesh or wherever you're listening to me from, you can pick up my podcast and the live. So, all right, we mentioned earlier we're going to talk about Dr. Fauci. I really question whether he's actually a doctor, but they say he is. I haven't seen his credentials. He made a lot of questionable decisions and forecast early on in the pandemic, which really had people going, yeah, I'm not too sure about that, dude. What's going on here? So now Dr. Fauci is upset because military personnel are opting out of the vaccine. Really? Okay. Hey, Anthony Fauci, did you forget that American soldiers are also U.S. citizens who can make a decision of their own? Or did you forget that? Are you trying to use the military again, as we've done in many prior generations, as a guinea pig? And the reason I say that, and I have contacts with lots and lots of military personnel. A lot of them have taken this vaccine, and the first words out of their mouth is, "That thing sucks." First off, it hurts. Okay, and a lot of vaccines do, and we, as military personnel, we take a lot of vaccines. If the common civilian was to ever walk in there the day when you got to catch up on the ones you're behind on, they would faint. And because, I mean, I have seen where you've gotten 6 and 7 vaccines in one day and have to go back the next day to get the other 4 you hadn't had a chance to get because they didn't want to overload your system. But and some of you old Vietnam vets that are out there know about that. You current vets know about it also, especially with anthrax and all the different things that they give us vaccines for before we go overseas. And a majority of it, we do need it. But with this instance, he's complaining because the military personnel are opting out. And he tries to shame them about it. Now, his comments, he says, in reality, like it or not, you're propagating this outbreak. Oh, yeah? Okay. So instead of being part of the solution, you are innocently and inadvertently being part of the problem by not getting vaccinated. And Fauci went on to say that while military members must think of your own health, they also must think about your social or societal obligation, including people close to you personally, as well as other members of families of other individuals. Really? The last I looked at any statistics or information, the military didn't have that many cases. So where you're getting that they're part of the problem and propagating it, I mean, my God, right now your bases are locked down. I talked to a soldier at Fort Bliss, Texas. They can't even leave the frickin' base. They wear a mask inside and outside, whether they've got 6 foot of social distancing or not, which is okay. Prove that one to me. The restrictions on the military personnel are so extreme. Civilians on the outside would be screaming right now. And of course, you see Fauci's not buying, he's not going by all this. Now, he's able to get around and take his mask off, do what he wants to do. He's not restricted in his home. And yet, Ed Dozel, I do agree with you. He's part of this scorched earth strategy to try to, it seems like he's helping Biden try to destroy this country. But this is ludicrous. You're going to go to the people who protect your happy ass all over the world, and you're going to shame them into getting a vaccine because you, and I still question your methodology and your science on it. You're going to tell them they have to get the vaccine? Okay. There's a lot of people's had reactions to that. As I was mentioning earlier, some of the folks that I know They've become sick. They've had night sweats. They've had chills, weakness. And it's not just for a few hours. It's lasted for several days, which now makes them unable to operate in their military environment. So, hey, Dr. Fauci, do you want to disable the entire United States military just to satisfy your thoughts or some made-up methodology? Yeah, vaccines work. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. Vaccines do work. But as U.S. citizens and those citizens that we protected and defended, they have a right to make the choice. And those soldiers are still U.S. citizens. They didn't give up their rights just because they raised their right hand and vowed to protect the nation and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. They didn't give that up. So, Fauci, please close your mouth. Go back to what you were doing. Go back to mainstream media and rattle off to your troglodytes out there and leave the military alone. Get back in your wheelhouse where you belong, because we can take care of ourselves. Believe me, we've done it before and we'll do it again. So go away, leave us alone. So it's just, I get infuriated when you get somebody that has absolutely zero background in military operation, military personnel, or what we do, that's going to sit there and try to demean us and shame us into doing something that we know how this goes, and we're not going to make everybody do it because not everybody can, not everybody wants to. Okay. These are the guys that are defending your freedom, and you're trying to take freedom away from them. And brother, you ain't got a whole lot in the military as it is, because you will answer to somebody. So yeah, Fauci, you need to just be quiet and go back to your little rat hole and stay there. Leave the military alone and let our doctors and let our officers, let our NCOs take care of us and make sure we're healthy and safe. Anyway, get me all wound up when you start screwing with us. Edward Dozel said last night he was forced to leave his granddaughter's outdoor soccer tournament for refusing to wear a mask, stating that the police were following orders. I'll put that up there, Ed, so everybody can read it that's around. But that's crazy. Again, that's part of Fauci's. He reminds me. He's starting to remind me of Dr. Mengele. If anybody is familiar with Nazi Germany, Dr. Mengele had come up with a lot of this stuff, a lot of strange things like that. You need to do this. You need to be inoculated against this. And these particular type of people needed to be put away. And Fauci, in all reality, is doing the same thing with masks and vaccines and social distancing, and telling you can't have maybe 2 or 3 people in your home. I'm sorry, you come to my house and try to tell me that I've got to put a mask on and I can only have so many people, you're liable to get hurt. Or you're going to be run off my driveway at the end of a shotgun. You're not going to come in my home, on my property, and infringe on my rights. It's just not going to happen. Me and people like me, my brothers and sisters in arms across the branches, have defended for years the right to live freely. And I'm sorry, you're not going to come in here with something stupid and try to take it away. So, I don't suggest going up against the police, but there are times you can stand your ground over stupid things. So, that all being said, we're already a good 34 minutes into the show. So let me get one more little thing in here. One more little ad, and then we're going to get into the National Guard and the fiasco on January 6th. Whether you call it a riot or insurrection or whatever you want to call it. Hey, what can I say? It is what it is. Some idiots got in there and did stupid things. No, I don't think President Trump incited it. But anyway, we'll get into that. We'll get into the National Guard response in Washington, D.C. and what they're saying about it in the mainstream now. So if you just kind of hang with me, we'll get this last ad out of the way, and we'll get back and we'll talk about the National Guard. So Stand by.
I was in the hospital with my son for 18 months.
When he got injured, I wasn't prepared, but I knew I had to be strong.
When I was told about John's injury, I was in complete shock. I just remember rushing into his room and giving him a big hug and letting him know I was there.
These veterans and families are just a few of the heroes we serve at Homes for Our Troops. For thousands of severely injured veterans, everyday life is filled with barriers.
It was really the little things throughout the house. Counters that you can't roll up to.
I had to drag my wheelchair down steps.
I want to help, but he is so determined.
At Homes for Our Troops, we build specially adapted custom homes with features like wheelchair access, roll-in showers, and automatic door openers that allow them to function independently and focus on their recovery and family.
This house is freedom.
It's hope. It's a new beginning.
This house has given me my family back.
To learn more, visit hfotusa.org.
Here, but that's okay. Like I said, it's a good organization. I fully support them. Home for Our Heroes. All right, just recently, we started hearing about an incident. I'm sorry, I got a cough drop in sometimes when my throat gets a little dry, but just bear with me. An incident with the National Guard that's currently in Washington, D.C. over tainted food. Something we're kind of used to if you deploy, but not something that we necessarily want to go into all the time. We kind of like to have good food, at least make sure it's cooked. But now all of a sudden, the members of Congress are calling for changes to food services operations for the National Guard troops that are assigned to protect the Capitol. And because some of them got sick from meals, eating tainted meals served to them. Some of these soldiers were saying that the meals were raw. Some of them were just nasty, undercooked, making everybody, some of them found metal shavings in their food. Now, how in the hell does that happen? Considering we've got the Food and Drug Administration supposed to be inspecting this stuff, and your health departments. What's going on here with that? They are reporting, the National Guard confirmed to The Hill that about 50 National Guard members have been treated for gastrointestinal complaints. They got sick to their stomach. And I'm hearing, as I read right before the show, that they've got more that are coming up, getting treated for being sick to their stomach, common things, diarrhea, vomiting, things of that nature. That's crazy. The problem is extended to National Guard troops deployed from other states. So this thing is starting to spread a little bit because somebody's got some crappy food going out there. And a lot of the Guard troops, they're not stupid. These guys are well trained. They're very intelligent. These men and women, they're going out and buying their own food. Like, I'm not taking that kind of chance. We even do it on base. If we find a mess hall that is kind of substandard, or they're going through changes and their food's like a little, we'll go off base and we'll spend our money that we've earned to buy our own food, because that's being provided to us is substandard. So these lawmakers have seen this and like, oh my God, now we're going to have a political optic. They're going to step in just like they did when they sent the Guard troops to the garage and had them out there in the cold. Now they're going to step in and say, oh, we're going to help you out. We're going to fix you. Don't fix me. Just get my food right. I don't need you to fix anything. They're saying the most serious result of this malfeasance is the impact these failures have on the National Guard's ability to execute its objective. The poorly prepared foods, excuse me, has already resulted in multiple incidents of gastrointestinal distress, and it impacts the Guard's ability to perform their duties, which is very true. If you're sick, you can't protect anything. Ed, I got to disagree with you. They're not deliberately poisoning the National Guard. Be careful making those statements like that. I don't think it was intentional. I just think it was pure neglect and oversight, which is nothing new. You got people out there that really don't care. Hey, I've got this nice government contract, gives me a whole bunch of money. I'm just going to throw out there what I've got. So unless I get some additional proof or there's charges brought, which, yeah, good luck with that one with this administration. I don't think they're deliberately poisoning the troops. Most people love their military personnel, no matter what side of the fence you're on. Now, they go on to say that sometimes they must be isolated because it cannot be determined whether their symptoms are from COVID-19 or from the inedible food. Now, we've got both Democrats and Republicans in the Michigan congressional delegation wrote a letter earlier this week calling for either the current food service contract to be voided and replaced with a new provider, or that National Guard members receive a per diem to buy their own food. Now, that would be great because now we're not taking money out of our pockets and out of our regular paycheck. We get separate rations, but guess what? We're now on National Guard duty, and that separate ration pay goes to provide food for our families back home. And now I've got to buy food here because you've got somebody fixing shitty food. So, yeah, a per diem on top of everything would help immensely. Now, Carol asked that can the guardsmen sue the service contractor? That's a good question. That's something I would have to look into. I have heard of it happening before. They can file a civil suit against the service contractor and get reparations or get some kind of repair from that service contractor. But exactly how that works, I'm not sure. I've never been part of that. But like I said, I have heard of it happening. Usually it turns into a class action suit where a number of individuals join into the civil suit. Now, as to whether there's a criminal suit, that would have to be brought by either a state or federal agency. If they find, like Ed proposes, that they deliberately poisoned it, if they find evidence of that, then a federal or state agency will file criminal charges against them for intentionally trying to injure or kill people with poisoned food. Okay. Now, they go on here with a letter from Representative Bill Hunzinga, a Republican of Michigan. He says, completely unacceptable that our men and women serving in Washington, D.C. are being hospitalized due to the food they're being provided. He calls it a ludicrous situation, and somebody must answer and pay for what's happening to our troops. Now, National Guard spokesperson Matt Murphy said in a statement that the Guard Bureau is continuing with the current food service contract and vendor, which he said has served more than 1 million meals during the Washington mission to more than 26,000 troops. Mr. Murphy, I really question your thought on this. I can understand you want to continue until you get another service contractor, but how about let's let people know, hey, I'm going to find another contractor to replace them. Or wait a minute, how about contacting some of the small businesses there in Washington, D.C., several of them, spread that money around and let them reopen and provide meals to our troops? Because I myself, I know there's some good restaurants in Washington, D.C., got excellent food. And I would imagine the troops would really appreciate that. And hey, they can even go in that restaurant with their little mask on, go in there, sit down, take the mask down, and eat. So, yeah. And yeah, all they've done is they've awakened a sleeping giant when they've done this. So it's crazy. But yeah, Mr. Murphy, how about let's spread this wealth around to this money that you're pissing out to this contractor. It's obviously doesn't care or doesn't care about his employees that aren't taking care of the food, and let the local establishments take care of it. It says the DC Joint Task Force continues to canvass men and women for the feedback about their food, lodging, and general conditions of their service in order to identify and address problems. When potential issues are identified, we are diligent looking into them and taking corrective action. Well, obviously you're not, because you're still using the same contractor. And it goes on to say that the undercooked and tainted meals provided to National Guardsmen aren't the first issues to arise in their accommodations. arise with their accommodations during the mission to protect the Capitol. Of course, we know about the parking garage issue and that. So, like I said, it's not the first issue. So if you're going to bring these men and women in there to protect your happy ass because you're too scared of your own shadow, give them the right thing so they can sustain themselves there. It's crazy. Now the Capitol Police, and we'll get into that. The Capitol Police is Thursday has requested the National Guard to extend its deployment of troops to the Capitol for another 2 months due to ongoing security concerns. Surprise, Thursday, nothing happened. Where are you getting your intelligence? Okay. Yeah, they're originally supposed to leave on March 12th, but now they're not going to leave until sometime in May. So that's crazy. And like I said, the Capitol Police Chief he's appealed for the National Guard to stay because he's getting all these reports about continuing threats. So the acting chief of the U.S. Capitol Police has appealed to Congress leaders to use their influence to keep the National Guard troops at the Capitol. Okay, Chief, you can do that, but Congress has no authority to activate the National Guard. That comes from the president, that comes from the Pentagon, comes from the National Guard Bureau, and the individual states that are sending troops, their willingness to activate those troops and send them to you. So what's Congress going to do? They can make the request. Yes, they can do that. They can make that request through the proper channels. And to avoid what you had happen on January 6th, which we will talk about here in just a little bit, to avoid that fiasco, you better make that request in writing through the channels now. Not tomorrow, not 10 minutes before you need them. Now. All right. I'm trying to avoid the January 6th thing because there's so much BS about it. But we're going to eventually get into that. It's really nuts. Ed Dosley said not quite clear who called in the National Guard. Eventually, that was agreed to by the Pentagon, and the National Guard Bureau was notified and authorized. And that was finally from a request, which I'll get into later in the story. It was requested through proper channels. Yeah, it just took a while, and there was nobody refused the Guard being deployed to assist. It was never refused. They just never got the formal request, and they can't just shoot people out there without any kind of structured operational control. So they've got some kind of board, the Capitol Police Board, that is has sent a list of action it wants to be implemented, and we're just not sure whether the points were orders or just recommendations of what needs to be done. And this is the board that oversees the Capitol Police Force. So they said they wanted to extend the emergency declaration required by the Pentagon to keep guardsmen who have assisted the Capitol officers since the riot. So now, as to whether or not they're going to extend that emergency declaration, I don't know. I don't see a reason for it. The intelligence doesn't back it up. The actions that have occurred since January 6th do not back it up. So I don't see why we need to keep those men and women there away from their families, away from their homes, to protect the crying, whiny babies we've got in office. How about let's get them out of office and get people in there that's actually got a set. The Capitol Police is confused over how to do that, what to do, how to secure the Capitol after a dismal lack of protection in January. They've been criticized for it, and I've met some Capitol Police. They're some of the best trained personnel out there, but they are understaffed and undermanned. Oh, that goes from cutting budgets. Let's defund the police. What can I say? It falls right in that. They spent all day March 4th primed up, ready for another supposed attack, which never happened. So, yeah, they need to get their head out of their fifth point of contact and start paying attention to what was going on. But yeah, he is appealing to have more guardsmen stand around and do his job instead of getting the powers that be to give him more money like he needs and get more police officers out there. Now we've got two particular authors here. It's an article I came up with, or I didn't come up with. I found it, and it's rather interesting. The basic title of it is "This is why the National Guard didn't respond to the attack on the Capitol." It's Megan Myers and Howard Altman. They're actually respected journalists, which is really hard to say considering most of our journalists out there. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Hundreds of National Guard troops were posted in the streets of Washington, D.C. on Wednesday afternoon, but there was little they could do to respond as pro-Trump riders overran the Capitol. We had troops on the street, but they couldn't go to the Capitol. Of course, they state, investigations are imminent to determine whether the Capitol Police were undermanned and unprepared for the threat posed by 2 days of rallies against the results of the 2020 election. But the answer as to why troops posted blocks away were unable to respond to the siege is as simple or as complicated as a morass of bureaucracy. And they're right. There is so much you have to go through to get these troops moved from one point to another to engage. Okay. And to this point comes rules of engagement. When you get politicians involved in rules of engagement, you have this bureaucratic morass that we have to go through to shoot the enemy or to defend ourselves against an enemy. This goes on in Afghanistan and Iraq all the time. That's why when in 2019 and in 2012 and several other different year periods, we were relieved when they relaxed that rule of engagement so we could actually defend ourselves without having to get on the radio and go, headquarters, can I shoot this guy that's shooting at me? And then answer a shit ton of questions because they're not on the ground watching. And then they've got to call back to another headquarters. And that headquarters calls back to the United States. So the United States can call back to some other headquarters they forgot is not the headquarters you're assigned to. And yeah, you get the point. So yes, it's a morass of bureaucracy to get people moved, even here in our country. It's absolutely stupid. Okay. And it's pointed out that there were several hundred troops, posted around Washington, D.C. on Wednesday. There were the request of Mayor Bowser to support her local police, the D.C. police. So, they had worked out the support they were providing the Metropolitan Police Department. They would be on traffic control points. Mayor Bowser's police department did what they needed to do. They went through the bureaucracy and the morass early to get those troops there, and they had a operational organization in place. Okay. She put the request in back December 31st. She knew it was going to be a cluster when this thing went off. Was not aware of what was going to happen, but they knew it was going to be a lot of people and they needed the help and they asked for it. And the Secretary of the Army approved it. Okay. Now, the Defense Department was in contact with Capitol Police ahead of January 6th and ahead of the protests. But they asserted they would not be requesting National Guard support. That's the Secretary for Homeland Defense. There it is. He told reporters that they were not going to request National Guard support. Okay, the city did. Why aren't you going to? I mean, my God, you're the Assistant Defense Secretary for Homeland Defense and you're not going to request it? That's crazy. Now, of course, the D.C. National Guard, they did mobilize, almost 400 troops to support the Metropolitan Police Department. But it's like everybody knows that jurisdiction does not cover the capital area. It doesn't cover federal land within the district. And so its officers and guard support could not just rush to the capital. They've exceeded their jurisdiction. It's crazy. Okay. Plus, once they got there, troops had been acting in traffic control, not as law enforcement. They would not have been able or authorized to forcibly push back rioters or help clear the building, a task that fell to the Capitol Police and the FBI tactical forces they requested to help out. Okay. You have to make specific requests for the National Guard, otherwise they do not come equipped for it. Okay. You can't expect them to carry every piece of equipment that they have in their military arsenal with them just because you think something's going to happen, but you didn't request it. You know, that's like you showing up at work and your boss gets mad at you because you don't have your a meter of some sort, and you're an engine technician. You use wrenches. You don't use meters. So you can't expect them to have everything. And then when the chaos unfolded, that afternoon, reports surfaced there had been a request for additional guard troops, and the Defense Department had denied it. No, they didn't. They didn't deny it. They didn't have the request. They had a lot of people screaming for help, but because of DC's finicky federal status, any entity, whether it's the mayor or the Interior Department, who controls the parks within the district, has to put in a request for these guard troops through the Army Secretary, who gets it endorsed by the Defense Secretary. So, yeah, there is a step that has to be gone through. So they know what kind of troops you need. They can make a review. They can look at what your plans are, and they can get you the right people and equipment in place. Not just pick up the phone and go, oh my God, my butt's in trouble, send me somebody. Doesn't work that way. Plan ahead. Now, supposedly you've got the intelligence to work on it. They worked quickly to try to get people in place. But what they had requested was beyond what the mayor of DC had requested. So they had to get additional people in there and additional equipment in there. And you can only do that so fast. The Army is a big machine, and it takes a long time to get that behemoth moving. Okay. Now, there's a whole lot of ifs, ands, and buts in there. Things that we don't know about, things we do know about. I suggest everybody read, take a look and see what the information is. Watch the information that you get. Make sure it's not supposition or circumstantial. But all in all, the Guard did what they were told to do. And all these idiots out there that are saying that the National Guard didn't respond, they denied the request, is bullshit. And Ed Doze will answer your question. Yes, the NCOs do run the ground ops, but guess what? We've got to have permission to do that. I am an NCO. I can't just make an on-the-ground decision to go and take my troops over to another jurisdiction or to another area or to another combat zone without the proper approvals. Whether it's a bureaucratic morass or if it's straightforward, just giving a phone call. I can't do that until I get that authorization to do so. So it all boils down to the sergeant at arms in the House, the Capitol Police Chief, and everybody associated with that group did not do what they were supposed to do. They did not make the early call for these troops. Now, Mayor Bowser, as much as we holler about her and the fact she's a Democrat, she did the right thing. She asked for those troops early. She knew she was going to have a mass going on in there. She knew it was going to be a cluster. And she made the right call. Those up there at Capitol Hill in the Park Department thought they had it. Oops. Bad call. You didn't. Oh, and for all those out there running around saying that President Trump incited this, it's kind of hard to incite something that started 20 minutes prior to you even saying anything about it, about walking up there. So, can't help you there. Really can't help you there on what's going on. But that's my show for the day, folks. I'm sorry I haven't been around. There have been some personal things going on. There's been trying to get back into the workforce, trying to make things right again, trying to get a little extra money because I don't make a whole lot. I don't make anything off of this. So, but I enjoy doing the show, and I do apologize, and I'll be back on a regular schedule. Like I said, it's every Saturday at 1:00 in the afternoon Central Time, 2:00 Eastern. Yes, Richard, I'll have time to make things up if you're listening out there. You can also catch me on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 Eastern, 10 Central on Moving It Right, which is a political talk show. And it's political talk for two cool guys with me and Rich Ashton on there. I'm on, like I said, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that's on YouTube and on Facebook. Rich has a Facebook group. Join it, and you can watch it on Facebook or find us on YouTube. You can find me, View from Military Mind, on YouTube and Facebook also. Just look up View from Military Mind. And if you don't catch the show live or you don't not able to get to YouTube or Facebook, you can also get it on a podcast 24 hours later on any of your favorite podcast players. So I encourage everybody, join with me on live. Send your comments and everything to me. Ed Dozel, Carol, Bill Muckler, all the folks that join me on the chat. Hey, I appreciate you. I encourage your input. I encourage anybody to come on board and go ahead and give me some input, ask me questions, give me points that we can discuss in relation to what we're doing for the show that day. So, again, I thank everybody for coming on to the show, and I will be back on the air again this coming Saturday. And if you would like to be a guest on my show, by all means, send me an email at vfamm2020@gmail.com or send me a message on Facebook. I'll get you on the show, and you can say your piece on here. You don't have to be a military veteran. You don't have, you can be anybody out there. But when you do, make sure you back it up with facts and information and evidence. We don't want to go in there and just pop something out that we're not aware of. So, for all those who have joined me today, I thank you very much for being here. I look forward to seeing everybody again next Saturday. I also look forward to seeing you on Tuesday and Thursday on Moving It Right. So until then, have a great day. Have a wonderful weekend. Keep your troops and our police and our first responders in your prayers. And God bless America. From your host, Terry Mills, this is View from Military Mind. You have a great day.